Right, guys. Just got some news in from one of my community members. They linked me a screenshot of the chat here, which we'll be able to see in the video here. From Ray, the moderator for the chap that does Phasmophobia, said this: DK doesn't want more people. This is a passion project. I don't want to give up some of my passion projects nor share them with anyone. So that is a pretty strong statement, guys.
Yeah. It's super definitive, right?
Yeah.
Like he's like, no.
Yeah.
He
basically he just put a period at the end of that sentence and is not open for debate.
Right, that's it, right? Like this is the thing from that is that it does not appear to be open for debate. And that he's going to do this his way. He's obviously open to feedback from suggestions because I put suggestions up, but you know, nobody else is going to put their monkey wrench
into his plans,
into his work, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to discuss this because obviously we're very passionate about the game, and that has big implications on the future projection, the development, the time it takes to develop.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about the positives right away, right? So he's a developer who knows what he wants. He's done this project for X amount of years, released it on his own terms, has been running the entire thing, and so far, I would say it's been a tremendous success. Obviously, he knows what he's doing.
Right.
Obviously, he's very focused, right? He has his roadmap and all that. I think that's great.
Yeah.
For British, go ahead.
Yeah, obviously, because he has his passion and his idea, it can stay within the realms of his scope, so he can deliver us that passion and that idea, which he has done from the beginning without anyone altering it or steering it away. So I can see the positive in that regard.
There's also something else that I've seen over the years too. Devs, typically you'll have two different style of devs. Devs that will take a lot of feedback from community and people around them and team members, and then devs that won't take any feedback. And I feel like he's kind of positioned himself kind of somewhere in the middle. He's got his Discord open and he's taking suggestions, and as long as it seems like they're suggestions that he likes, right? It's like, this fits. This is cool. I'm making something that I think is cool, and this is something else that's cool. I'm going to put it in here.
Right.
Yep.
But he's also like, but this is mine. This is my passion. I know what I want, and I know what I want this to be. So ideas that are risky or, you know, that just don't fit within the vision of the game that we all love, he's not going to accidentally drive his game over a cliff, as we've seen from devs who maybe take too much feedback. Yeah. So I think it's kind of a nice place to be.
Yeah, and you know, so just a quick backstory. I worked in games for like 10 years at one of the largest publishers of massively multiplayer online games in the world. And the biggest takeaway from all that time is that players do not know what the fuck they want.
Yes, actually,
I quote that all the time. They have the Phas devs that yesterday. I was like, the quote I always tell people is that gamers ask for things that they don't want.
It's like they have this picture in their head that this is my dream, but dreams are totally different to reality when it comes physical.
Well, and they don't understand the ripple effect, because often putting something in a game will cause other things around it to change, and they don't want those other things to change, so they don't realize that the thing that they're asking for is actually not what they want. Yeah. A good example being like, oh my god, this one item is really fun to do, could we buff it? But then buffing that item means that other items that deal with it, which are super toxic and not fun, would then have to be buffed, and then that toxicity and non-fun would then overshadow the game.
So it affects the whole balance across the board.
Yeah. That's a really basic example.
It always seems like a lot of players, especially new to the game, they see just the tip of the iceberg, right? And they say that mechanic is super fun. I want 5 more of those mechanics. And they're not looking like how much that affects under how much under the surface that affects. And it would happen all the time where I worked, where someone would be like, just fix the text bug. It's just a text bug. And I have a story that I've never forgotten. We had a text bug where there was someone included an extra dot at the end of a sentence, and it was just in the description of an item. It was not important, and it would crash the game. As soon as you tried to look at the item, it would crash the game because it was like
dot.
A single period, because it was like in a French translation of the game, and it didn't know how to deal with like that number of characters or whatever it was. And that was a period, like one period. And so when players are like, I'd love to be able to, you know, talk to my group when I'm dead, it's like, well, that's not actually as easy as you think it is. And like the effect that it's going to have on the meta of the entire game could shift just from that one thing. But the players don't see that. They only see the tip of the iceberg where they're like, hey, that thing would be fun. And so that's, I think, where we run into a lot of problem with community feedback.
Yeah. I think the really, really talented devs are the ones who can take feedback and then translate it. Figure out what the player is really asking for.
Right.
Yeah.
And then introduce that into the game.
That takes years of experience, though. I'm hoping that all the information coming in, the dev's able to filter this correctly, as you said, and have his vision, and that vision line, his vision keeping all the noise away from the...
Right.
Yeah. I will say that one benefit that, as far as Phasmophobia goes, is that the game is pretty straightforward, right? Like, you've got a map, a house, and some tools.
Yeah.
And I think in this particular case, in this particular game, it'll probably actually be pretty easy for him to stay on that track.
Yeah, it's like step 1, 2, 3 kind of.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the appeal of the game, right? Is that it's so simple and easy to pick up. It takes 5 minutes to explain the game to someone. You have a room, it's haunted, you have tools, it's a puzzle game, go, right? That's really at its core, that's all it is. And then you just sprinkle in a lot of these atmosphere elements, like the oppressive nature of when you walk into a house, right? When the sound is just all around you and you can't escape it.
Yeah, you can actually feel that air, can't you?
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of quotes from two individuals that I really like. One of them is that the best games are games that are simple but that have a lot of depth to them.
Yeah.
And the other one is that good game design is about taking as much away from the game as possible so that you're left with as few elements.
Yeah.
It's the same philosophy for Japanese gardens. You want to take as much away from the garden as you can until you can't, and then your garden's complete.
Yeah, great quotes. I like them.
Yeah. And that's just, and so many people miss that, where they try to add like 10 systems on systems on systems of skill trees, on perk systems, on crafting, on all this stuff. And it just becomes such a mess that no one can figure out how to play, and the direction gets really lost. But this game is just so simple and straightforward. I think that's why it does so well. Is because it's just anyone can pick it up and play.
And you can play it in bite-sized pieces too.
Yeah, that's where it comes in now with the discussion with development time. And obviously, when you're working on your own, and you're the only resource producing content for the game, there's that aspect of development time that's very crucial. And because the systems are so simple, maybe the path of development is not going to be too steep to add new content. But if the content he wants to add takes a lot of time and resources, that's the balance between not increasing the size of your team and working on your own with what you want to plan and implement.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, because we're talking about kind of pipelines and content, I do have the Trello board open if we want to dive into that.
Yeah,
unless we wanted to stay on this for...
Do we want to hit... Now, do we want to hit the big quote a little bit more about the sorry,
just
the big quote? I had to reset my brain for a second about the definitive. I guess there's one more thing I wanted to say about that. The definitive. He's not bringing any more on.
Right, and so the other thing that I did want to talk about, if we're gonna go back to there, is the downside of this development mentality.
Yeah. And I guess that's what I wanted to touch on a little bit. There, while he's not bringing anybody onto the team, there is still the potential, especially with like just making a new map. Like he wants to add a mansion, a prison, and stuff like that. And if he wants to do more of that down the road, that is something that is at least very outsourceable. You don't have to hire a new team, but you can outsource it, right? And that's common in the industry, and that's not too bad. But there is the stark downside, and that's that this is probably going to be a fairly short and clean early access. It's kind of like what we see is what we're going to get.
Right.
And there isn't, like, you can take Phasmophobia, and there's so much you can do with this game.
Yeah, the scope is huge.
Most of that will never come to pass. It's going to be just a little bit more than what we have now. More bells and whistles, more scares, and some more maps, and then that's probably it.
Yeah, and that's definitely the sad thing about hearing him say that, is because there really could be such an expansive addition made to the game, right? It doesn't just have to be levels. Levels are the easy one because, you just do a little modeling, you throw in the same assets and the same scares and the mechanics, right? But eventually people are going to get tired of that, and they're going to want more. Like you said, more scares, more atmospheric stuff.
Yeah.
And if he's not able to churn that out on a relatively quick enough basis, that becomes very scary, because then you're going to have a lot of churn of your player base. And then you're going to have to be fighting to get them back.
Yeah.
I think in this sort of scenario, if I was the dev and looking at it, especially as like a content creator who's churning a lot of Phasmophobia content out, if I were the dev, I would kind of think like, well, I'm going to put it out there and it's really awesome. And I'll do what we can, and then the game will probably eventually die off to lack of content. So I'm gonna kind of shotgun good content, but rather than try and like string on just like as the player base dies, but just barely string on the content because you just don't have the manpower to do it. Probably just kind of wrap it up, get a nice clean game out of it, make sure everybody got their $13 to $15 worth or pounds worth, depending on what monetary you're using, and make something that you're proud of. But it's a small game, it's a small scope, it was a passion project, it's gonna die. And I think as a content creator, accepting that too, it's like, okay, we're making all this awesome Phasmophobia content, but it is going to come to an end.
Right.
And rather than probably get upset at that, we should probably realize that that's the inevitability of it and just really appreciate what we do have. And that was a really fun little game for 15,
That's a great perspective to have. Yeah. Yeah, you have to balance, don't you? You have to balance your wants and dreams for the game and your expectations and what it can be to the developer's vision and what he wants it to be. And obviously, as a player and a lover of Phasmophobia, I can't get enough of it. I would love to see it reach realms of huge content additions and just developing a layer and layer and layer. But, you've got to realise that there are different projects with different heights and different limits, and this is the developer's vision.
Yeah.
And there's definitely, like you said, Dust, there's an expiration date on this game. If you look at the content that people are putting out now, we're already having to invent challenges to artificially make the game play different. And that happened just, 3 weeks after the game has been out. And so we're already at that point where we're trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel to see, like, how else can we change this ourselves? Because obviously we got a couple of patches the week that it came out, and then not really much after that. There were some major fixes, but
he's definitely stuck on the beta branch right now. It's really bugged up, and probably doing as much as one person can do. Now, they are beta testing new maps. I know he's got people in there working on stuff, but exactly right. It's slowed down, and
it's slowed down right now, and they've got the initial path which you have there on the Trello with a few maps and other changes and maybe some extra for the Ghost, but it's like the issue is bugs is going to take up a huge amount, and we've seen bugs taking up a huge amount right now. So what does that leave for time for content additions?
Not a whole lot. There's a few things in the pipeline. Now I hear, and I've purposely had them not tell me because I want to be surprised with everybody else. But I do hear that we do have some really fun stuff coming, though. So there is content being worked on. There's some cool new mechanics, and there are things coming, actually. So there is some stuff to be excited for. So I'm super excited. But eventually, like, even that's going to have an expiration date. But it cracks me up a little bit because this is a game that people don't just scrape the bottom of the barrel for, man. Like, we love it so much, we're like licking the bottom of the barrel as hard as we can. We want every little...
We're taking the barrel apart.
Some more. And that's exactly what you want, right? And when people are gonna inevitably complain that there hasn't been a lot of updates and everything, what I like to tell people about these kind of experiences is we paid $15 and I've played 40 plus hours of this game already. A movie ticket for 2 hours of enjoyment is already $10 and $12. So for me, even if I had only gotten 8 hours of fun out of this game, I would have gotten my money's worth. But we're still going, and I'm on hour 40, and it's still fun, and it's still, every time I go into that house, it is a different experience. And it changes based on who you play with, and if you're playing in VR, and you know, everything makes a difference. And it's so, what do they call it? Emergent gameplay. That's what they always call it, is when you're not sure what the game is going to do, and that interaction of community and game creates a unique situation to you, and that time right then.
One of the best examples are when a bug happens in the game, but you don't know it's a bug and you think it's the ghost doing something, and it creates like this, oh my god.
So I had something happen like the first day I played, and I've never seen again since. And so I'm not sure if it was a bug or not, but we were in Asylum and we were in the haunt room, and I kept seeing after images of my teammates walking by, and then they would vanish.
That'd be
and then
a
they
really
would come
cool
in, and I
feature.
would start talking to them. I was like, "Hey, Amy," and then they would vanish, and I realized that Amy was outside.
That's not a bug. It has quit happening, but the ghosts used to mimic teammates. And I know it's not an after image because when it happened to my team, I was standing in the foyer of one of the 2-story houses, and then my character turned sideways, walked the stairs, and then walked up the stairs backwards.
Oh my god.
That'd be terrifying.
I hadn't been upstairs, and they started laughing. They're like, "Dusk, what are you doing? You're being a dork." And then as soon as it got upstairs out of sight, I walked in the front door, and then they started screaming. And I was like, what's going on?
That would freak me out.
Yeah, it was pretty trippy. It was cool.
And so stuff like that, you know, I thought that was actually a bug because I've never seen it since. But that was probably one of the most scared moments I've had in the game, is when you realize that someone that you were just talking to was not them. It was the ghost.
Yeah.
And that was an experience.
Probably the most disturbing version of that happened to me is the ghost mimicked my character. And it, for whatever reason, just kept doing it. And I was running a 2-man with somebody, and it just sat inside the house by the window and just stared back out at us.
Nope. I'd have been out of there.
That is absolutely wow.
Yeah, we were like,
I'm getting tingles on the back of my neck just from the description.
We'll pack it up. We're good. This house is
Hit
way
that control.
too evil.
I'll be like, Sergey, drive the truck.
Yeah, that was definitely disturbing. It was great though.
And you know, something interesting, something else, kind of off topic a little bit, but I started playing with a heart rate monitor, and I found something really interesting when I was watching my replays and editing my video, which is that even when I was in a haunt room, it didn't usually get too much higher. But what always causes my heart rate to spike, and I had no idea, is when I'm walking towards the front door. I'll watch my heart rate go from 75 to 80 to 85 to 90 to 95 as I'm walking toward, because in my head, I'm like, it's just going to slam
It's
shut.
like that anticipation that is going to lock you in. Yeah.
And so subconsciously,
cool.
my heart rate goes up as I walk closer to the door, and I had never known that.
That might be a good path for development, using tools like that.
Yeah, it just has such an effect on you.
That's true. Ooh.
Because it can see what's working, what's being scary, and if you work through development with tools like the heart rate monitor, you can see what really is impacting the player.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the backlog here, and some of the big points are what we already kind of mentioned. Obviously, new levels, prison, apartment, mansion, are what he has in the backlog right now. Some items such as night vision goggles, an SLS camera, which I'm not really sure what that would do. This one is interesting. A spotlight for tripods is an item that's in their backlog.
Oh.
I mean, you could put portable lights kind of thing.
Right, so even when the power gets cut, you can keep an escape route. That will probably be especially useful in something like the prison, where it might be a little mazy. Right. And when the lights go out and a hunt starts and things are confusing, you can create like a network or an area where you can at least keep your bearings.
Also, you could use that so that you can free up your hand with the flashlight, one extra slot. You have your lights in situ. So then you have 3 actual useful items without depending on the flashlight.
Yeah.
Another interesting one here is that make plates and glass smash into pieces. And so for Poltergeist, that is a terrifying thought of hearing just a room with the kitchen, the plates are just flying off the walls, shattering. And then when you couple...
hear an addition with that they're also going to start making it where the ghost can throw things at the plate.
Yes, and just smash off.
No, I don't like that at all. Don't like that.
You just walk through the door and get a kettle in your face.
That kitchen knife all of a sudden.
Oh, the kitchen knives. Oh, Matrix. We'll do that backwards bend over thing to avoid them.
And then he also says that to make it spookier, they're adding static ghost shadows on windows with a chance to spawn based on sanity. So it does look like he's trying to drill down into how can I just make the overall game scarier?
Yeah, more atmospheric.
And a game that I hear brought up all the time that does this so well that I had to stop playing it is Visage. I don't know if you've ever played the game Visage.
Visage is terrifying. It's the best ghost hunting kind of game I've ever played. The atmosphere is just dreadful.
Yeah, and so I'm just scrolling through here. One of the categories here. Obviously, they're gonna make the game spookier. They're adding like the ghost can interact with objects during the hunting phase. They're gonna add voice sound effects during the hunt, so you may hear the ghost saying something or screaming something at you. I think.
I will love that because the singing is so creepy.
Is awful.
Yeah.
It is awful.
So stuff like that, I'm all for.
I love your sound alerts that you have with this hearing the ghost going.
Yeah. Not a fan of that. But what was worse is the other day I heard a child laughing, and I was like, "Headset off, we're done." Yeah.
Imagine if you're on a haunt and you just hear, "You're all going to die down here," or something like that.
Yeah. Now I'm getting out of the house. So one of the things they have listed on here is ideas needed. And this is one of the big ones on here is they bring up the fact that when you die, you really don't have anything to do. And that can be a real experience crushing feeling to get in the house, be the first to die, and the team still has no evidence, right? And so it looks like they're just he's fishing for what can I do?
Oh, I didn't realize he was fishing so hard. I thought he already had some ideas set up.
It's listed right. Yeah, it's listed right now under ideas needed. It's not in any category where it seems like he has a specific vision for it.
Do you have any ideas, Dusk?
I absolutely do. So one of the things on the Trello board that I think a lot of us might be familiar with is that the potential for maybe a PvP mode where a player can control a ghost.
Yep.
So why don't instead we get rid of that and make it so that when you're dead, now you don't become the ghost, but you can start to take over some maybe atmospheric events, and you can help drive some sort of narrative to make the atmosphere even scarier.
That would be cool.
So you're no longer being scared.
You get more money to cause more fear.
Ooh, yeah, and even give some money if you can. Get some.
Yeah, that would
because the game detects your microphone. So if you get like some screams, it can detect screams. Get paid for the more screams you produce.
That would be fun.
Yeah. My idea is, that maze place you get dumped, that room you get dumped in. It'd be great if you could make that into a maze, and you just got to try and find your way through to
that would be
to
cool.
like an objective.
Get out of the purgatory.
Yeah, get out of the purgatory, and that maybe will dump you back into the game. Just give you something extra to do before that ghost wandering scene.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people in my comments keep saying like, "Oh, I would love to see if when you're dead, you could interact with the voice box and kind of spook your team." But I think those people don't realize that it's if you encourage behavior that would allow you to mess with players from being dead, then it will just encourage people to want to die. And so you have to be so careful with mechanics like that. And so it has to be something that would benefit the team, so people aren't forcibly trying to die just so they can go, ha, now I'm gonna spirit box mess with everyone, and I think they're not thinking that far ahead.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate on that one a little bit. Because Phasmophobia is not PvP, it is co-op,
right?
And it's definitely a different environment. And if there is a mechanic where people do want to maybe go die intentionally, is that necessarily such a terrible thing? Especially for a more veteran player that's looking to maybe spook the newer players and stuff like that. They will definitely seek out and do it, but is it going to be fun and make the game spook? Maybe that's actually kind of some emergent gameplay that might be kind of interesting. Maybe you could even put places on the map like a hazard that you could even allow the player to go get themselves killed at a certain point so that they could engage in those mechanics.
It's a trap.
So I could see, okay, so here's an idea kind of playing off of that. Instead of intentionally getting yourself killed, I'm not sure what the movie was, but it was where this team of ghost hunters or whatever, they put themselves into like a cryostasis and died so they could go into the next realm and then get information and come back.
Flatliners.
And so flatliners, yeah. And so if the game implemented like, okay, we can send someone into the ghost realm for, let's just say 15 seconds, and maybe they could glean something, but the ghost will be there and you still have to avoid the ghost. And so now there is threat, now there is risk, there is loss and gain, and you're catering towards still being a cooperative experience, right? And so that might be something that that you could
do. As a it's sometimes hard to get all the clues and stuff, so maybe if you escape the ghost in this dead realm and get through the maze or whatever object you have in the way, they can find one clue for you.
Right. That would be cool, and that would be high risk, high reward.
Yeah, no, that sounds great, actually. Yeah.
So, like,
I'm glad
for
I
example,
just made that up on the spot.
Yeah. For example, you get through that maze, and at the end, you see, like, on the wall, maybe a handprint, or you can see your breath, and you say, "That's the one clue."
And then pull me back, pull me back,
pull me back.
Right, yeah. And they'd have to use the spirit box to hear you say "pull me back."
Yes,
right?
That would be so cool.
Yeah.
That would
so
be really cool.
they would have to maybe track you through the house because the spirit box doesn't work anywhere. So now you are working in tandem with someone. Plus, there's risk and there's reward. That feels. I don't know how that I just came up with that right now, and it sounds really fleshed out.
And you get a defibrillator paddle to use on the body.
Yeah, and then just shock them back.
Shock them back.
Yeah. So you'd have to even leave one team member behind to watch the body.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
That would be crazy. On that same tab for ideas needed, they say they want to nerf the thermometer because it is too easy to find the ghost's room.
Mm-hmm.
I think with that, if they just slow down the temperature drop, so it's more gradual, that would be fine.
Easy.
Yeah.
The thermometer is interesting because it's not a major piece of evidence, but
you don't actually need it because you can see your breath.
Right, but it leads you to all the evidence, and so it's really a strange addition to the game, because normally all the other tools, right, like the the parabolic microphone, at least points you in the right direction, but it doesn't give it away. But the thermometer right now, you just walk in the room, you're like, oh, it's 3 degrees, this is it, and you're like, toss the thermometer, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see the thermometer could need some balancing and work. Maybe even just get the evidence to spread out rather than it being focus spot.
I would even say another good thing to do would just be that the more that you use gadgets, electronic gadgets, the more you're just pulling the ghost toward you. So if you decide to just walk around with your thermometer on all the time, well, congrats. The ghost is going to be very upset about that, right?
You're kind of feeding electromagnetic energy
to it and powering it, so it can be treated as though you're just constantly calling their name out while you've got.
Yeah. So that would give you a reason to turn your tools off, turn your EMF reader off, turn the thermometer off. Because once you turn these tools,
your salt and your sticks and your lower tier stuff.
Yep.
Good balancing ideas. Yeah.
They say potentially remove the random contract and let you pick what map you want. Oh my God! Thank you, Jesus.
That'd be great.
That just needs to happen.
Needs to happen. I don't understand why they decided to go with a random, because we've all been in the situation where we're like, hey, I'd really like to do professional school. And you're like, okay, quit, enter, quit, enter.
Originally, I think obviously it was like for the immersion, right? You're like contract, but I think at this day and age, right? Like we know that bad gameplay in favor of immersion is never a good idea.
Yeah, it's like the balance between realism and just good game design. Yeah.
So that might just be some hindsight where the dev was like, you know what, that's a bad idea.
Gives you a kind of progression feeling when the professional stuff starts bleeding in. Yeah. Rather than just straight unlocking it. But I prefer to just straight unlock and jump into it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to read through the rest of stuff. They have a known bugs tab, and then they have an in progress tab. There's not a lot of interesting stuff in the in progress. A lot of this is just small bugs. Like camera cycle without anyone pressing the button. I've seen that a number of times.
Yeah.
Placing tripods on stairs bugs them out. It's just not terribly interesting.
Yeah. So
that's bugs in a nutshell, though.
Yeah. There's going to be, I think a lot of time's going to be put into bugs and stuff. And I feel that we're going to get new stuff and it's going to bug the old stuff, and there's going to be this little cycle of fixing, implementing,
there's
fixing.
There's always a bug cycle,
yeah.
There's an interesting one here that doesn't seem to have many comments, and I don't know why. But it says, in progress, make dead players be able to pick up props. But for some reason, this is getting no attention. That's huge.
Right, you could... that's the one thing that I think would be fun, right? Is you could kind of breadcrumb trail, help your teammates find things. And that's organic and immersive because they don't hear your voice. You're not telling them things, but they look down and all of a sudden from the nursery, there's all the blocks leading down the hallway to something, and it's like, oh my God, it's a sign, and then that feels like something straight out of a movie, right? Like,
it'd be great if you could spell words out with the blocks, like help.
Oh, you could. Yeah, you could. Oh, that would be creepy. Just
that would be so creepy. Yeah, help me. Dead.
Nope. If I play with someone that spells out "help me" or like murder in blocks, I'm sitting in the van. I'm sitting in the van.
Hey, we saw you in the high school. We know you go to the van.
Yeah. I went back into that high school to check the journal. I will have you know, the stakes were high. It was very scary, but I did it.
I know.
We're
I did it for the team.
Proud of you. These jokes are very tepid, guys. The comment section will be like, here they go again.
Oh. So let's real quick, let's talk about if we had one thing that we want more than anything else for them to add to make this game from right now to we think it would be perfection. What would be your big want?
Well, for me, I would like some tangible progression. So I would like to see some upgrade stuff. We got the van, we got the home base. I'd love to see all that money and hard work not just go into equipment, because anyone can get equipment. I'd like to go, hey, come check my base out. Look what I've upgraded. Look what I bought. And just be able to show off some really cool stuff. Maybe
cool.
even collectibles you can collect and put into your base too.
That would be very cool.
I think for me, I would like a series of difficulties that made the game a lot more difficult at every step, and the scares a lot more intense as well, to kind of make this like super challenge track that would be just monumental to have to climb.
So what if they added kind of like a Smash Brothers when you're trying to set up your custom game, right? They have all the sliders, the drop downs, so you could customize exactly how your level was going to play out. Just say like hostility 10 maximum, number of hunts all the time. You know, how fast is the ghost? Twice as fast as normal. You know, stuff like that.
Like Among Us has those little modifiers, doesn't it?
Yeah. Or a lot of games have those, especially like rhythm games, right? Rhythm games are loaded with those. Yeah, that would be great.
I play a lot of DDR, and there's some modifiers in Dance Dance Revolution that are impossible.
Should see me dancing. I don't have any rhythm.
I would like to see that, actually. I would like to see that. That was exactly what I thought it was going to be. Exactly what you just did.
Cut it!
Doing the funky British over there.
And what do you guys feel like? Does this game need it? Because I've heard a few people mention it. Story. Does this game need a narrative?
Nope.
I mean, that's one of those
and
things
lore.
that, like, it's always nice, sure, but it definitely does not, as far as like need.
Yeah.
I agree. It does not need it at all. It tells its own story.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Every single time you go into a new house, that is a new story, and it's up to the players who are basically writing it.
I've had a few guys say they'd like a bit more description on the ghost, just to make you feel more attached to the situation, like the family that's been involved, or cool. What the ghost is doing.
You know, once they add the voiceover lines for the ghost to say stuff, I think that might flesh out that gap.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah, you're right.
People can then fill in the blanks with their imagination when you've got a female ghost that is just screaming "help me" as she comes down the hallway.
Nope.
I was murdered.
We don't need that. We do not need that one.
Flashbacks to Woman in Black.
Yeah, now that you mention that, one thing that I would like to see is that it happens often where you find the haunt room, and then when a haunt starts, you're just like, okay, I'm going to go next door. I'm going to go to the bathroom, whatever. It'll be fine. I would love to see the spawn location random. I want to see the ghost come out of the ceiling or the floor or the room that you thought was safe and
come out your friend's mouth.
Why not?
Climbs out the TV.
If you want that, play Asylum until you get a mayor, and that is exactly what you get. Screw mayor on Asylum.
What a nightmare!
It is a nightmare. It is a literal nightmare.
It's funny because on my screen, when British did that, he's just looking off to the right because my cameras are in different positions.
We'll give you that perspective,
so
don't you worry.
Dusk is right. He was looking right at you, but British was looking at me, and I'm like, that's not me. He's way over there.
It's all right, Dusk.
For me, I would, and I've seen a lot of people say this, I want the truck not to be safe. I want people in the truck.
I like that disconnection where you can just.
I think that's the problem. Is people are like, okay, let me breathe. Maybe not fully exposed, but I want the truck to be spooky. At the very least, just spooky. Like maybe the lights in there could flicker. Maybe the truck shakes a little bit. Maybe you're immune from the ghost killing you. But I think a lot of players miss out on stuff just because they like sitting in the truck because it feels so safe.
I actually don't think so at all. So here's what I think the truck being completely safe is actually brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One, people like to play games together with their friends.
Yep.
Everybody's at least probably got one friend that horror games are too scary for. They have something they can do.
Right.
But that's just the little piece. Whatever, that's fine. The major reason I like it being safe is because it lets you breathe. And you put your guard down, you rest, and you don't get immune to the fear.
Yes, it's the fear immunity.
Your guard down and you rest. When you step back in the door and that immersive air, that heavy air hits you, it's so much more intense because you have to make this subconscious decision in the back of your head where you're like, okay, I have to now make myself step back into danger, and that
go through that envelope again.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of psychology at play there that makes the safety of that actually really brilliant, and it makes the fear spike so much harder when you do have to go back in.
You know what? You actually just changed my mind. I hadn't thought of that. I was really just thinking about it from a perspective of the entire game should be uncomfortable. But you know what? You're right, because when you do step outside, you have that breath, right? And that's exactly why my heart monitor goes up as I'm walking towards the door.
Yeah.
And so that would disappear. And so I probably wouldn't even be as scared now that you said that.
You could have that modifier, as you said, with toggles. And maybe on professional, you can toggle the van not being safe.
I think adding some more gameplay to the van could be cool. Like if you have some more things in the van that are more critical for people inside, but the equipment has a tendency to short out or fail, and you have to be on breakers.
Okay,
and if you let some of that fail, the people inside could die. So
that would be incredible. I'd like that idea of the team depending on you in the van as well.
Yeah. That could be cool. Or if maybe they had some way where you could maybe see the position of the ghost, so you could tell your team, like, don't be upstairs right now. You need to leave if you're upstairs, or something where they could, but I guess you don't have radio, so it wouldn't matter.
Well, but not necessarily during the hunt, but what if there were periods, like some type of EMF event, and during that event, if that event happened at the same time that a hunt started, the ghost would travel twice as fast during that hunt, and you could warn them, hey, the ghost is doing this sort of activity, get out of the area in case it starts.
You just give me an idea.
Okay.
You could have equipment you put on the wall, and someone has to press the button to trigger something to slow the ghost down or snare them for a moment. So
like put something in the van user, like, here you go, and then the van user can like.
And then they press it, hits the button, it paralyzes the ghost or freezes it for a moment, giving the person time to escape.
Like an EMP, I don't know if an EMP burst works on a ghost, but we could pretend it.
I mean, it could, yeah.
just a burst or something, and it just stuns the ghost for a second, and you can actually save your teammates.
I could dig that.
Yeah,
because the coolest part of the van, right, is setting up a camera inside, and then you have to go back to the van to interact with it. So if they just added more interactions between gear inside the house and the van, that would definitely do it. And I think one great example is, do you know the infrared, the light, the
it flashes, yeah.
I've never had that work I don't even know what that thing does, because it seems so not helpful, basically.
Okay, I'll tell you what it does, and it's not helpful. So it's not connected to the van at all. The idea behind it is that it's more of an on-site thing. You can set it up, and then you, the player, can watch it. And if it flashes a light, you're like, oh, the ghost is there, and it will illuminate the area.
Yeah.
Its only real relevant use is that you could stack a bunch of them in, like, a mayor's room. And it will constantly trigger and keep light on the mayor so that it won't start a hunt. But then mayors roam so much that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it
is a way to keep light flashing in areas, though.
Yeah, so that to me feels like you could connect it to the van and have the person in the van like slam a button and it does a huge pulse of light, right? That just like maybe destroys the ghost or sends it away for a second or something like that.
Or just stuns it at the very least,
just stuns. Even if you bought your team just 2 seconds, that would be the difference between life and death for a lot of players.
Especially if you sped up the base movement speed of the ghost so that it was required. Because there are a lot of ghosts right now that run at the same speed as the player.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Or just a little bit
So you just
faster.
walk backwards in Asylum being like, you can't catch me.
Yeah, or if you can constantly break line of sight. Like I had one today chasing me in the high school, and the pillars in the main room where the entrance is, I kept cutting the line of sight. I through
running around a coffee table when you're being chased.
Yeah, and every time it lost sight of me, it would stop for a second, and it let me kind of like get back ahead of it. So the threat was actually very minimal.
And yet you can imagine it, can't you? Say, "Oh, thank you, Dusk, you saved me. You flashed that light and you stopped it just a second. You saved me. Thank you."
The person in the van gets to be clutch.
Then. Yeah.
Another suggestion that I've seen, and one that I definitely support, is possession of players inside the house. And I don't know if you guys have heard that one at all.
Yeah, that's difficult because it's taking over the control of the player. And when you're in VR, that can be so disorientating.
Yeah, so I've heard that
I think black out the VR's vision, so the guys maybe go into that ghost room while the ghost is moving them.
I've heard that that's already in the game, but somebody told me that they claimed that they were in a game with somebody that got possessed, and they said all that happened was their character just walked back and forth and they couldn't control them.
Huh.
Right.
But that also could have been a troll being like, "Oh no, I got possessed."
Yeah, I'm pretending to be possessed. Yeah. Or maybe someone flashing their lights and tricking them that there's a haunt going on.
I would have no idea what you're talking about. I certainly have never done that.
Great minds.
That was honestly, as soon as I got into the game, the first thing when I had a group of 4 of my buddies, I was just like, time to flip the breaker a bunch, and you could hear them on the radio. Oh my God, what's happening? And it was very satisfying.
I've done the same thing on British Nose. Yeah.
Role model, Dusk, role model.
I mean, oh no.
Right. I definitely don't do that ever anymore. That's not me.
So, no extra team overall. How do you feel about that? The whole picture. That, if he's not going to hire more people, what is your final feeling on that?
I feel like my final feeling is a little disappointed because that means that Phasmophobia is not going to be this kind of ongoing long-term game that has a community and stuff like that. It's a one-off game for this October, but it has been so fun that I'm kind of like, well, I think I'm okay with that. I'm going to take it for what it is, what we got. And, after October's gone, so will Phasmophobia, but that's just how things are sometimes. And I'm glad that we have it now, though, and enjoy what we got.
Yeah. I personally feel I'm disappointed because I feel it limits the scope and potential of the game. I understand the balance opinion about keeping it in a specific direction and vision, but I feel that the whole community as a whole could benefit from a bigger team seeing much more features and content implemented at a better pace. However, at the same time, I'm very grateful for the game, and I know I've had many good hours from it, and I've definitely got my money's worth. And disappointed, but happy and satisfied at the same time that I've got to experience Phasmophobia.
Yeah, I think it's a smart call, right? He had obviously a smashing success of an idea. He wants to hold on to that. I support it, right? We paid our $15. We got tons of hours out of it. I just don't feel like we can really be mad that the game really does. And like Dust said, end of October, probably this game is gonna just kind of trickle off unless he pulls something insane. Because there really is an end to the amount of replayability that the game will have unless he starts layering many more game updates, and I just don't see that as being possible. But
since we've been talking about this, I've kind of got this random thought here, and when you were talking, British, you kind of got me thinking a little bit more about it, with like the community and stuff like that. And Son, your experience in the game industry, you might be able to answer this question here, actually. If the dev had this kind of like plan and he was going to be like, all right, here's what I want to do. I'm going to finish up and I'm going to be done with Phasmophobia. Wouldn't he then, for the most part, just want to sell the game off then and let another team take it over? Or is it kind of more of a point of pride to kind of like keep, because it was his, to keep it as was?
The thing is with passion project, that is the key words there, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know enough people on the inside of the industry to know if that's like selling an idea is like bad or selling a game.
So, yeah, I can tell you for certain that if you own the IP to a game like that, more than likely he's already been approached by Sony and Microsoft to port it to those platforms. They've obviously seen how successful it is on PC. It would be a shoo-in for those platforms. And the game is so simple, I'm certain he has a deal on his desk already from those console providers. The problem is they have a process of what they call submissions to get the game to console. And unfortunately, being a solo dev, I don't think he'll be able to do that because submissions are so incredibly taxing to make them happen.
The certifications,
right?
Yeah, to get those. You need to ABC.
Do you think he would be up for just selling the game though? Like, you know, like how Minecraft did. Minecraft, the head guy for that just sold the whole thing off.
Yeah.
But you don't hear about stuff like that often. So is that something that game devs are typically against?
I think in the case of Minecraft, they saw a hugely lucrative business that they could expand and expand. I don't think that exists for Phasma. I think it's a one and done packaged boxed product that is just going to be, here's the game. It's been patched to version 1. That's what we're sending to consoles. And that's it. I don't think he needs to sell it. I don't think he would be adding any extra development on top of that. But again, I just worry about his submissions process. Because like Microsoft, for example, will say, we will only take a submission after you give us all of these arts and all of these formats, and it can have this many curse words in it, and you need to show us the most violent and the most friendly parts of the game, and you need to change this and this and this. And they have it so tightly controlled. Normally, you have an entire team called the submissions specialty team at a game development studio that this is all they do. That is someone's full-time $100,000 a year job is to just know every company's specialty and how they take submissions. And again, with how thinly he is already stretched, I don't see him being able to do that.
Right. All right. So if he's not going to port to console, then if he's not going to sell it to a larger company and just step away from it and let a big team have it, and it stays on PC, there probably isn't a big company that wants to buy it that would just want to stay on PC.
I don't think so.
No.
So does that maybe potentially mean that he actually wants to stay with this game long term? Do you think he has long term plans for this game? Do you think maybe he's going to put a robust progression system, or do you think from the beginning this was just like going to be a mostly one and done game, and then he had always planned to just step away from it and kind of like let the boat sail?
British thoughts?
Yeah, I think that I do think he has passion and pride in it. I really do. Obviously, it's hard to guess a developer's mindset, but with the word set he has there, passion project, and keeping it close, you know, that protective kind of thing. That says to me, I'm passionate about this. I love this, and I want to make this special. It's my special thing. And he could spend years and years on it, or you know, you can wake up one day and go, I'm burnt out. I've been doing this too long. I want to step away. And there's also the argument of the fact that this kind of game might cause copy games to pop up, like other ghost hunting games. And that's going to really push him in. He's like, can I compete with these? Are they going to take it further than me?
That's an excellent point. I think that probably answers the whole question right there, right? The game's success is too big for it to not have copycats. And I think the game's simplicity is really easy to mimic. It follows the core horror elements, atmosphere, threat, and danger.
Yeah.
And then, in my opinion, the safe spot, and then the reemergent from the safe spot, over and over again into the threat and danger areas. I think a game team could figure that out, obviously, right? Like, it's pretty basic, and we will see Phasmo clones that will probably be pretty high quality, right?
Yeah.
And he's probably aware of that, I would assume. So I think that probably kind of means that we can probably heavily theorize that he's going to finish up the Trello board, and then that's probably it, huh?
I wouldn't be surprised to see that. And honestly, if I was a studio that had a lot of money and wanted to make something successful, I would say make Phasmo, but we're going big. We're going way bigger than what this person had in his scope originally. Because again, you can't compete with a dev studio who just says, I have 30 developers. We're now developing this. And they could have something out by, early next year. That's
just to get
pretty
that
well
core
polished, lots of features. Yeah. And so, I mean, you see it with Battle Royale, right? That genre exploded. And then whenever you have a game that does pretty well, like a new kind of genre-defining game, you start to see the copycats pop up. And often they can be better than the original, especially if he is just like, I'm the only one who's going to be able to work on this. You can't argue that that's going to limit him, because it is.
Yeah. So
I guess that kind of sums up the inevitable future of the game. So I guess we just kind of have to brace for impact at this point, right? Enjoy it while we can.
Yep.
And give it a fond farewell when that time comes.
Yeah.
Do you have any... look at. I was just gonna say, look at Fall Guys for a perfect example. Fall Guys exploded onto the scene, was tremendous for about a month, and then people moved on, and then suddenly it was Among Us, and then it'll be something else after Among Us, and then it just keeps going and going. And everyone thought that, oh my god, everyone's playing Fall Guys and this is it. And if you look now, no one's playing it, and that was just a month ago.
Yeah, and those are which I feel like that was kind of predictable, though. I kind of looked at Fall Guys and could tell, because that's a game that had like simple and fun mechanics, right? And we talked about that earlier. But what it lacked was the depth, right? It was also kind of a shallow game, and I think that's the giveaway on if something has the long term. Now, the weird thing about Phasmo, though, is that it actually does have a bit of depth to it.
Mm-hmm.
But what it lacks is developmental manpower to be able to keep it going.
I think it's important to say as well, with people seeing this news, reacting to it, don't attack the dev. Be nice about it. Give positive feedback. Just he politely.
May have, absolutely. Like, he may have just created a whole new genre, and we will see clone games that we will get to play as well. Yeah. So that's the future. It's not. Don't be sad that this game's gone. Be excited for what the next one is going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just opening doors. It's opening doors for other experiences. He's created the foundation.
Be happy that this guy created this foundation, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, he so, like, in no uncertain terms, he just defined an entire new genre of game.
Yeah.
And that's insane. To just, like, have nothing, and then suddenly he's like, 4-player, horror, co-op, ghost hunting. And it was like, poof, and then the game, that genre now exists because of this man. What he's done is phenomenal.
Thank you very much. If you're watching this, thank you for the experience.
Thank you.
So any final closing thoughts before we kind of wrap this up?
Yeah, we've covered everything. I'm hoping that the developer will come out with clarification as to if he's going to expand this team, what scope the game is going to have, just to make it clear for everyone, so they can just level their expectations off correctly.
Right.
I guess that would be kind of nice. Yeah.
just an official, what do they call it? A letter from the dev. I
yes.
think he needs to do a letter from the dev, because we're almost coming up on a month of release, because I think it came out on the 18th of last month. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, how communicative has he been other than the Discord and the updates?
I think it was the 18th. If I were him right now, on the 1 month anniversary of the game coming out, I would do a letter from the dev, and I would say, hey, it's been a crazy month, boom, and just lay it out from him, so there's no speculation, so there's no, people grasping at any little thing they can. Just lay it out. Talk to your player base. That's important.
And if it's bad news, put it in Comic Sans.
Right.
Yeah, put it all in Comic Sans. The whole thing.
The whole thing.
So you were about to say something random, I think?
No, I think that's everything off my chest about it.
Oh,
okay. It did shock me when I read it, and I'm thank you for discussing with me, guys. I really enjoyed that discussion.
Yeah, it's nice to talk to like-minded people who don't just yell at you and sling.
Listen to me. I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah. Which is most of the internet these days.
Well, yeah. Hell yeah.
Let's all finish on a hell yeah. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.